Let's do it. Very quiet start to this meeting. I'm going to call it to order at 2:32 p.m. This is the February 8th, 2018 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee. I have to apologize today. I'm not feeling the best. I have a pretty bad headache, so I may not be as perky as I normally am. First item is roll call. Mr. Young. Ms. Buck, here. Ms. Leon. Here. Mr. Post. And Ms. Wong. Well, this just so everybody knows, Hal Hart, who was the previous planning director, has relocated, and in the interim, until we have a future planning director, Ms. Carol Long, who is the manager of the Long Range Transportation Planning Division, or is it Long Range? Long Range Planning Division, will be sitting on the Technical Advisory Committee in that role. And Ms. Walsh. We do have quorum.
Craig, would you make our public announcement, please?
Yes, I will. All AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to comment. Business item or presentation by staff or a consultant. The committee will then be given a chance to discuss the matter, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment. I'm going to point this out since you're not mentioning it, but maybe you will mention it. I'm just excited that the majority of people on the committee are women. We've come a long way.
Yeah, we have. So.
Baby.
That's true. 5 out of 7 committee members here.
Or more, and you'd have a quorum of them.
I know.
Miss Vetco were here. And then you guys could do everything.
All right, first item is the approval of the agenda. Do you have any edits? Any changes?
Second.
So moved by Mr. Young, seconded by Ms. Buck. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. So we do have one pretty extensive set of meeting minutes from last month's, the January 11, 2018 meeting. I thought you did a pretty good job of trying to summarize the discussion that occurred. Because it was lengthy.
Just.
Yes, let the record show that Mr. Hanson joined us.
Kind of.
Kind of. I know. We're looking at the meeting minutes from last month.
Did we get you anything? Did we get you anything? Ask for maybe?
Been on the phone.
You
Got there.
You hit the age though, I guess, when you're, I've been told sometimes I'm that age that when you take noises and you stand down and sit down and stand up.
I make a lot of noise other times too.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Long, seconded by Ms. Walsh. Is there some discussion?
I have just a few minor corrections like before in that too.
Okay. Just some,
Little missing words here and there.
oh, okay. Any other, I guess, comments or questions, or any objections to approval of the minutes? Minor edits, and Ms. Wong in a second. All right. Before us, our first action item today is the draft complete streets policy.
Let me just start, and then I'll have Joni give you more details. But basically, what we're asking, this is the complete streets policy that we've been working on for a while. It's been in our work program for a little bit. What we're asking you to do today is release it for 30-day public review and comment. We have gone through some agency review, so we have some agency comments. What we'd like to do is have a 30-day public review, take any comments we receive from the public, take the comments we've received already from the agency folks, then have a work session on it, and the TAC talk it over, figure out where we want to go with those comments, and then we can bring it back to the regular meeting here to adjudicate the comments formally, and then move it on for recommendation to the policy committee. So, what would you like to add, Ms. Little?
I don't think I have anything really to add. That was pretty good. Yep, we're just, so the draft that you saw last month, we had comments received from the technical advisory committee members. So those have all been collected and in this comment response table. And so the idea is just to put it out to the public and get their comments, and then come back and look at everyone's comments together and have the advisory committee decide if comments want to approve or disapprove, and looking at it all at once rather than doing a review once and then doing a review again after the public comment.
Yes.
So if you send in comments, where are they? They're in a table somewhere? Do we have it?
We have the tables actually posted online, but
We don't have it in our packet.
I didn't put it in the packet because we're not, our hope is not to go over those details today, but wait until we get the public comments and then have it at a work session.
Okay, so this is unchanged from the one in the previous, the one that's in our packet.
That's the same, it's the same draft. That's the one.
Okay. Okay.
Any,
Questions, comments, maybe?
I have a question, actually. The muni is elected not to go ahead and adopt this or have the complete streets incorporated as part of your process. Is that correct?
or can I answer that? The municipality hasn't, I think their intention is to, once we have a draft that's approved by the policy committee, is to eventually take a look at that draft and maybe adopt their own policy or some version of this one. But I don't think they've made any actions to start that process yet.
Okay.
Until this one's approved by the policy committee.
So then this pertains to which projects?
So this pertains to all projects that receive AMATS funding
Okay.
only.
Okay. So it's not specific to like NHS projects, for example?
Unless do those receive AMATS funding at all? If they receive AMATS funding, it'll be pertinent to those projects, but if it's not, if it's just a bond project, or if it's a strictly DOT funded project, then no. It's not gonna apply to those.
Yeah, I'll echo, I think the long-term intent is municipality already with their, I guess, their CSS of policy and what they've gone through and reviewed, and I guess the process that we followed, the intent is to continue to shoot for, complete streets. We don't use, I don't know that we use the buzzword complete streets, but it's still, it's something we consider on every project that we move forward. So I don't know whether we'll adopt this exactly or some form of it to incorporate into our DCM.
We incorporates
Yeah.
already.
Okay, but is there anything here that clarifies actually which projects this is applicable to?
I believe so.
Right.
I think there is, sorry. Hold on a second.
Right under section 5, which is on page 3, the second bullet. Transportation projects receiving money that passes through the local anchor MPO agency, AMATS, will be expected to follow the complete streets approach.
Yes.
So DOT had a number of comments, I think, that we submitted. And how will those be addressed?
As I mentioned earlier, once we get the public comments, we will then have a work session.
Okay.
And then at that point, TAC will be able to work through all those comments and decide their thoughts on those. And then come back to the TAC for a recommendation to approve the policy committee.
Will there be a reluctance to go ahead and make changes after it goes out for public review?
Don't know that I can answer that question because I'm not a committee member. This committee will have to decide if they're reluctant to make those changes. But this has been our practice in the past, is we put things out for review as a draft, and then comes back in, and then TAC adjudicates all the comments and makes their recommendations. And it has sometimes levels after that to go through, but sometimes that's the last one before it goes to the policy committee.
I guess I was confused why it was sent out for comments prior to this meeting then, if that was the intent.
Well, it was sent out before as an internal agency review only, which is pretty much our standard practice. We do an agency review first, and then we go to public review.
And it was an info item. I'm sure it's not, and the policy has already been, it's been posted on the website. It was posted on the website last month when it came forward to you as an info item, so that is, you wouldn't want to, until the policy committee has had a chance to look and make final decisions on all comments, you wouldn't want to make significant changes to the draft. What we normally do is just collect all the comments, you review them all, make your recommendations, and then it'll go to the policy committee before the draft itself is significantly changed.
Every entity that is connected to AMATS is advisory except for the policy committee. So, we could suggest a change and the TAC could agree with it. It could be a document that goes through the assembly and planning and zoning, and they all could agree with it. If the policy committee doesn't want to do it, they can say no. And so we can all advise one way and they can make the final decision. So changing the document before it gets out there, it's not our practice.
I think that, Ellen and I kind of have a little bit of the same feeling, is that, okay, please review my next meeting, get your comments in. So I did, and made the time, I got my comments in, and, we're really not gonna look at them until later. So that's a little bit of the, maybe clarifying timeline. Yes, we're gonna take the solution. Why say we need your comments, but at the same time, it's not gonna happen. We might as well review simultaneously without the rest of the world.
I guess
And that might have been my fault, because when it was presented to us as an informational item, my question was when it was gonna be coming back to us, and I asked for the comments to come in without recognizing that this was going to go out for a 30-day public review, so that could have been an error that I made.
Okay,
Really.
so just sort of communication.
Yeah.
Either way, I'll hang on to my comments, yes. I'll check for it.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how staff is supposed to go ahead and interact in this process here. What is the benefit of going in and doing a staff review? A lot of times you want to go ahead and work out kind of the intricacies of something before you go ahead and release it for public review, rather than releasing something for public review. That's, I think, has some level of discrepancy with what staff kind of thinks is appropriate on both levels. So we have this cooperative relationship. Just wondering why we're not trying to hash it out ahead of time.
I guess all I can say is that this is the way we've done this for years, at least a decade. We put out a draft, clearly says draft on it, and that's how we have done that. If the technical advisory committee wants us to do something different, I can go get the comment response summary, and we can spend an hour and a half hashing out the comments. I'm happy to do that if you'd like to do that now. But it seems to make more sense. Part of what we wanted to do was have a deadline so we could get comments in instead of waiting a long time and getting a whole bunch of comments at the end. We took a lot of time with the comments that were received, preparing a comment response summary, but we haven't gone over those in the committee yet. And it seemed to make sense instead of hashing out those comments now, doing a public review, and then doing it again, we do it all at once. That was the suggestion. I guess you're in the technical advisory committee, however you want us to work this, we'll do it.
I guess I'll just say one last thing through the chair if I could. I guess my chagrin is in part because the very first time I saw a draft of this, which was many months ago, you know, I did go ahead and mention a concern and a comment, which, you know, I think that there was some support for it at a verbal level. It's essentially the same comment that we submitted to the staff this last time. And I'm just wondering, it seems like there's a lack of responsiveness. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So, just so I'm clear, and the reason why I asked, when I was looking at the documents, on the agenda, it had said review and forward to policy committee for approval, but really the actions you're asking is what's on the sheet that's, you're asking us to release this draft for 30-day public review and comment
Yes,
period.
30-day public review.
I was just making that clarification. So, are there any questions or comments from the public at this time on item 5A? Hearing none, the matter lies in committee.
Okay, I'll move it.
Release this for a 30-day comment period for the public comment.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hanson, seconded by Mr. Young. Are there any opposed to releasing this? All right, then we will go to a vote. Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Ms. Buck? Yes. Ms. Leon?
May I abstain since I haven't seen the comments for or against?
Mr. Post? No. Ms. Wong?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. So you will be released for 30 days. That was 6 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Okay, the next item before us is 5B, the performance measures, target setting, procedures, and MOU.
So the MAP 21 of the FAST Act instituted the need for performance-based planning. Basically, in a nutshell, we are here to do that. As opposed to coming up with projects in a vacuum and thinking that they might do something, the idea would be you set measures for what you want to achieve, whether it's in the area of pavement maintenance or bridge maintenance or safety targets. You set those, and then your projects that you build or plan for are designed to meet those metrics and improve those targets or meet those targets. And so a part of that is we have to have an agreement between the state of Alaska and the two metropolitan planning organizations in this state to basically on what procedures you're going to use to set your performance measures, and then an MOU to actually do that. So before you today, what we have is this first one that says performance planning, target setting procedures, and then behind that should be the MOU, which actually relates to that. And we are asking you to look over that and recommend it on to the policy committee for approval, so that the policy committee chair can sign those documents so that we can go forward with an understanding. We have on the agenda today, the last business item is the safety target setting performance measures. We'll go over that when we get to it, but it's the first one that we have before you. Basically, the states have a certain amount of time after the passage of those pieces of federal legislation to set their targets, and then the agreement of 180 days after the targets have been set to either set our own or agree to the ones that the state has set. So, what did I miss on that, Aaron?
We gave this to you guys back in November, asking for comments. I don't think we received any from anyone. We also gave it to the policy committee.
I know the document, online has a signature for both, for AMATS and AMATS. Are we all signing one? Is it the MOU for all three entities?
Yeah, I just didn't copy off the
I
last
just was
page,
making
it's
sure.
identical, it just says FMATS instead of
Yes.
FMATS.
Okay, so same language, same everything.
It's
One
basically
document.
the same document for both, it's just gonna have two different signatures pages, one for AMATS and one for FMATS.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this, committee?
So in preparation of this, Craig walked me through this item, and I don't know if Craig had a chance to pull 2017 targets, just as a comparison.
That's for the safety one down at the bottom. I did not,
There are no 2017 targets, it's 2018 onward for safety targets.
I think what she was looking for was just what was the fatality rate, what was the number
Oh,
of
okay.
fatalities then? I did not get a chance to pull those.
Because right now, these are just numbers on a piece of paper, and I don't know, how did we do compared to last year in terms of fatalities, obviously.
I think that we'll get to that when we get to E, but we don't have, I can tell you the 2017 data with the thing is done yet. So,
Do you have 16?
we may have 16.
I think it's
but
14 or I think it's 13, and then they extrapolate it out to 15 or something like that.
Yeah. There's always a, I guess there's always a lag. And, yeah, there's always a lag. Any other questions or comments on the MOU regarding the target setting? Are there any questions or comments from the public? Please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, Scott Thomas, DOT Traffic. We've been told that we also measure older drivers in HSFD work, so it may be worth a check to see if that doesn't pass over to the MDO.
What was that?
Might check to see if there's older driver reporting required at the MDO level or recommended. We are looking at that at the state level.
Is that age discrimination?
They look at younger driver too.
Oh, okay, at least they do that.
There's different type of crash patterns for different age
All right.
groups.
Okay, we'll
If you've ever
accept
sat
that.
down and looked at it, it's actually kind of interesting. And there's a reason why young males' insurance rates are higher.
You know, my observation, it used to be true, but my observation is young female drivers should have their rates up more now.
No, do you want to know why? Females actually are involved in more crashes, but the crashes that males are involved in are higher severity, higher dollar value damage, and more likely to result in a fatality or major injury. So when they're making mistakes, they're making big mistakes. Hence the reason why the insurance values are different. Part of my job, I have to look at those stats, so it's kind of interesting.
Scare me more.
All right, hearing no public comments, the matter of the MOU lies with the committee.
Move forward with policy.
Moved by Mr. Hanson, seconded by Ms. Walsh. Are there any opposed to forwarding this MOU to the policy committee for approval? Hearing none, we will forward. All right, the next item is 5C. This is the Freight Advisory Committee's support, the resolution. Resolution supporting evaluation and conduct of certain freight route pullouts.
So, our freight advisory committee, they passed this resolution, I want to say in November, and we just were challenged to get a signature from our chair of that committee, because we hadn't met in a while, so. And then with Teresa leaving, that kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit, so this is the signed version of it. It should be on the back of the same page there. And I I'm trying to read this email that I received from John Cecil, who is now staffing that freight committee, to get a little clarification on what exactly this does. It relates to a kind of construction work that might be occurring on doubles routes. I got a map of it, and I understand that there aren't a whole bunch of them, but there are ones around the city where that occurs. And so it bubbled up from the commercial vehicle enforcement group, who were concerned about, they wanted to clarify that the pullouts, when you're in the scoping and design process, you want to make sure that for construction that's occurring in those areas, they hopefully design or make sure you're paying attention to having a pullout for a double, the long combination vehicle. So this is the language that's here. It says, they clarified that the pullouts under consideration for scoping design are south of Potter Marsh and north of the Glen Highway scales. And I just want to make sure that when DOT, because those are the double drafts are owned by DOT as far as I know, that when they're in the scoping and design process, they think of the doubles. That's the way the freight resolution was, that's how they brought it up. The reason it's not super clear is I wasn't at the meeting, Aaron wasn't at the meeting, and John wasn't yet with AMATS, so I called Teresa in Arkansas to get her highlights, but I can't, so. I hope that makes sense. The resolution is there. They're just looking to get information to the DOT, and they're asking the AMATS to request that DOT provide scoping and design documents for those double routes for evaluation and comment by the freight committee to help move things along. That's the freight resolution. Clear as mud, right? Not so much.
So when you just said, did you just say south of Potter Marsh and north of the scales?
Pullouts under consideration right now for scoping and design are south of Potter Marsh and north. So that's one location, south of Potter Marsh, and then another location north of the Glen Highway scales. That they would hopefully, they're asking DOT when you're looking at those projects to look at providing pullouts there. I don't know what exactly pullouts is.
I guess my only comment is on the resolution. It says, talks about the above referenced routes and facilities for evacuation, and there's nothing referenced.
Well, the third whereas says, routes detailed in chapter 25 operations wheeled vehicle
Is that
7,
specifically?
Administrative Code 25.014. I'm assuming that's it. Allowable long combination vehicle length on certain routes.
Question.
Yes.
Do they need action on this resolution like immediately because they have a project in mind? Or could this wait a month or so that we get clarification hopefully from Teresa?
Well, we asked if we could get someone from the freight committee who had insight into it, if they could attend, and they weren't able to attend today. I don't think we're going to get insight from Teresa on it. She's a little busy. But I think if we got someone from the freight committee who was actually at the meeting, or someone from CVE, Commercial Vehicle Enforcement, where this bubbled up from, we can do that. I mean, again, it's asked in November and kind of sat there for a little bit. I don't think it's earth shattering, but I don't know which two projects they're kind of talking about that this might impact.
It's a concern for the department on a couple different levels. Our process is inclusive of all stakeholders already. And providing a preference to a specific stakeholder group kind of throws out of balance a little bit. Our attempt to try to be inclusive of all groups equally. So the bicycle and pedestrian folks might send me a letter next month that says, same thing, right? Oh, we want our own seat at the table during internal scoping and deliberative processes. So it's a bit of a rabbit hole for us from that perspective. But that said, I don't know what's broken, and I guess it's a little hard to try to figure out what problem they're trying to fix or what we can do maybe within our existing processes to make it better without necessarily providing preferential treatment to a very specific user group. That could cause a lot of other user groups to want to have that same level of treatment. So we would be very hesitant to provide or to be on board with this without really understanding what the problem is and maybe looking at other ways to resolve the problem.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, actually, I have a quick question myself. Commercial vehicle enforcement,
Yeah.
it is a part of DOT, correct?
Correct. John Bender actually falls under.
Okay.
So, and he's part of DOT, so.
I say, so is he part of the internal review process that would be looking at scoping of these projects, or no?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, all stakeholders are involved.
Well,
in
I'm just
this.
asking, because if this is something that says they're coming from commercial vehicle enforcement, you think that they'd be a part of the discussion already, so I'm a little confused on that, so, I'm sorry. Ms. Walsh?
Okay, so my question one is, just reading this, just on its face, it's like they're asking, we'd like to have a look at the drawings. Aren't the drawings already released to everyone anyway? Is that what you're saying? That they're in some way, there's an announcement, these are available for public review or comment or presentation somewhere
Right.
along the way?
Right, it depends on the kind of projects, but we have public involvement plans
Yeah.
for each of the capital improvement projects that involves public outreach, open houses,
Right.
distribution
Right.
online through websites, especially for the larger projects.
Or public hearing for certain
Public
things.
hearings.
So it almost sounds like they just want to make sure they don't miss it. They want to make sure they know that a project's happening and that, so it's redundant, it sounds like, but that's what I'm getting at. The second question is, this is maybe a silly question. What's the purpose of the pullouts? Their traffic expert here can explain it.
Well, if you get so many vehicles behind you heading down the sewer.
Oh, you're just talking about passing lanes. Or are you talking about pulling out, pulling over until?
If I may, Sean Paskey, project manager for the Department of Transportation, acting chief of highway design, while Jim's out of the office until next Monday. Getting back into the business of things. He was married just a week ago. But so their concern is that when they're hauling doubles and commercial vehicle enforcement pulls them over, they need a rather large pull-out in order to make that accommodation.
To go get inspected or whatnot.
Right, and so with limited existing pullouts along the stretches of the Glen Highway and south along the Seward Highway, there's limited opportunities to actually do those operations safely, so they just don't, basically.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question?
Of course. So is that type of a criteria or requirement part of your design consideration anyway?
It's not a design standard that I'm aware of. Scott, do we design for double vehicle inspection pullouts? I'm not aware of.
We don't have a design tailored to enforcement at a pullout. We do have a standard that increase the size of our slow vehicle turnouts for more use, like up to 1,000 feet, quarter mile, which should be sufficient.
Sounds to me like, if I understand this right, that they're trying to maybe impose a standard that doesn't exist today, or a consideration or requirement?
Yeah, Ms. Walsh?
Or maybe
Well,
they
if
just
you,
wish
what's
to-
the actual resolution? The actual resolution is a request that DOT provide scoping design documents for the routes and facilities for evaluation and comment. That's all they're asking for, which is already out there for review and comment, so it's kind of a redundant thing. So I don't think there's any harm to what they're asking for. I think DOT's probably already providing it, it's just like salt and suspenders, they want to make sure they're getting notified, and they can look at it, make a comment, not necessarily, they're not asking to mandate that the pullouts happen and they be X length, they just want to see the drawings so they can make a comment. I don't see that that's all that harmful, but.
But you already had that opportunity to your previous point, right?
Yeah.
So does the policy committee need to pass a resolution to make something that's already available?
Exactly, that's the question.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems.
Like we're adding a process to something that already exists.
So it seems like what it's doing is maybe it's helpful in that it lets the department know if somebody's missing it along the line, maybe there's something in public involvement, or distribution or whatever that, you know, we're gonna take another look at it, I'm sure we're getting these to the right people, but, you know, so it's useful in that respect that this came forward, but yeah, do you really need it? It's already in the process.
Well, let me, the way this resolution is written, does the Freight Advisory Committee get to review these? Because that's what this resolution says.
I don't think anybody's precluded from reviewing it.
I know, but they're not notified? I mean, that's all it's saying is that the Freight Advisory Committee be notified.
Yeah, put us on the list for distribution or whatever.
So,
So I think it's kind of harmless, but
Yeah,
I think it's difficult though.
Our distribution lists for our projects are rather extensive. For works within the municipality of Anchorage, extending all the way down past Portage, you know, we do send out all of the information to AMATS and to the municipality for technical review. There's plenty of opportunity to pass those documents to each of the committees. A lot of their concern is outside of AMATS, the core AMATS area, and so this is an interesting means to it.
Well, we still have to open this for public comment, but I guess there's a Freight Advisory Committee meeting coming up very soon that I saw on the website, so it might not hurt to perhaps postpone this and get some clarification, but Mr. Henson.
I mean, we modify our list of groups to who we send plans to constantly. I mean, is it as simple as just on those roads, just adding an alternate? I mean, this seems so innocuous that, to mine, you just add it, said Friday Advisory Committee on whatever roads there were outside of the, north of the way station and south of Potter. It seems like, I don't know, this is kind of a,
Okay, well, I don't know if there's, well, AMAT staff, and this is maybe just quick, AMAT staff keeps the mailing list as far as who's on the Freight Advisory Committee and who gets what. And all of these projects come through and are distributed to AMAT staff. So, I mean, does this need to come to saying that DOT has to do this, or is this an agency review process that needs to be cleaned up internally? I don't know.
did they already see it?
I don't know, yeah, so.
Plans brought in?
The reviews already come to the AMATS stuff now for the plans and such.
So could we just inclusively say all advisory committees under the purview of AMATS be notified when plans are sent out for review?
As staff, we try to make sure the right projects are coming to the entities for, you know, a review. So we'll have informational items before the Bike and Ped Committee on things that have impact. So we'll have project managers come in and do that sort of thing. We've done the same thing with the Freight Committee. So challenge for us, as Sean pointed out, is we end at Potter Marsh. So anything south of that is not outside of our planning area. Everything north, including that, counts. So we would not normally look at something that is south of Potter Marsh. But we try to do that, make sure, hey, we can see that there's a project in the works for such and such. Let's see if they can come and do a presentation to the Freight Advisory Committee. The challenge is, of course, there's a finite budget. And if we're bringing the staff and the consultant, et cetera, that's coming out of the project budget. I don't control that budget and I can't pay anything. So it just has to, sometimes it's just Sean, which is fine. But we can make sure, I mean, we always try to make sure that's what we're doing. We're getting the right projects in the right place.
Well, if you can at least pass on those notifications to all interest groups under, especially the advisory committees under AMATS. And then if the Freight Advisory Committee wants the department to come make a presentation to them, or the bicycle pedestrian folks or whoever, we're certainly willing to do that.
And that's not the issue.
Yeah, Mr. Post.
Freight Advisory Committee is advisory to
All of the committees, including this one, are advisory to the policy committee. But the policy committee has asked that any things of this nature come to the technical committee first.
Sure. So it seems as if it's advisory to AMATS. It might be prudent for AMATS staff to be spearheading that process.
To do what in that process?
Be spearheading that process for you guys to go ahead and lead, your committee's review.
Chair.
Sorry, Ms. Clark,
So I know Craig tried to get somebody from the freight committee to speak. Would it be worthwhile inviting somebody who was at that meeting, since we have so many questions about this?
Yeah, we can hold this over till next month. and have
Is there a
someone from the
due
freight
date
committee
or
show up.
anything on this? No.
Yeah.
And for projects outside the MPO, we aren't going to run it through AMATS. So 75 to 90, did you run that through AMATS?
No, I mean, we did presentations to, basically all the groups except for BPAC that, had an interest, especially the Freight Advisory Committee.
Not yet.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee before I open up for public comment? Are there any questions or comments from the public on this item?
Yeah, John Cecil, AMATS. Just to let you know that next FAC meeting is on the 14th of February, so I can reach out to them to try and get someone at your next meeting to provide some clarification. I'm sorry, Craig has given you everything I know based on this. I'm at somewhat of a disadvantage, week 6, so on the job. So.
Okay, so it's next
Why not?
Wednesday.
Valentine's.
Yeah. I never been celebrating myself. Are there any other public comments at this time? All right, hearing none, the matter lies with the committee.
I guess I would like to defer it to the Freight Advisory Committee to find out what the problem is.
Can we make a motion to defer?
You can just table it.
Or can we just table it?
Okay.
Well, it's a motion, either way, it's a motion. All right, so the motion to defer.
Motion to table this.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Hanson, seconded by Ms. Walsh. Are there any opposed to tabling this until we get a little bit more information next month?
Follow-up comment?
Yes.
Steve Buckle's supposed to sit on this committee, and I think most of us have a counterpart somewhere that sits on the freight committee, so I intend to ask him that tomorrow. What were you thinking?
Yeah. Let's see, it is. Yeah.
And if not, why not?
All right.
Would it be helpful to have someone here at our next meeting?
I think that's the intent as well.
That's what I'm going to try and do. Yeah, I tried to have someone for today's meeting, and that just didn't work out.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the next item before us, 5D, is the AMATS TIP administrative modification number 17.
I will start this, and I'm sure I'll leave stuff out, but the memo's in front of you, kind of explains the main things that we're trying to do here. We had a couple, table 3, we had to change the termini of the Abbott Road project. And as it says, add an expected increase in the AMATS allocation. That's reflected in the STIP. Some minor changes in table 4 to reflect the increase in the cost estimate for the bike plan project implementation and airline trails. And then some changes in the TAP, Transportation Alternative Program funding, table 4A. That's a quick overview. Anything that's really pertinent that I needed to add here?
This is really needed right now.
That's important.
We must have this approved this month to keep Abbott Road moving forward.
So what changed? You said it says to update the termini of Abbott Road Phase 2?
It changed from Jupiter to Birch. It went from Jupiter to, it was originally Jupiter to Birch, now it's Elmore to Birch, so it's including a small little portion. Seems there was a miscommunication of what the termini of the phase one was. That was from Lake Otis to Elmore, and it was originally shown as Lake Otis to Jupiter, so we had to update it. The feds kicked it back because the termini wasn't updated in the tip, so that's what we're doing.
Is it Termini or Terminus? We haven't talked about one.
Termini, because it's just phase two we're updating. Phase one is fine, so I'm not. We're just.
Potato top.
Termini.
Yeah, but you're arguing with an English major.
I believe it's technically termini.
With a secondary in engineering.
Okay. Are there any questions for Aaron on this? Basically, just
over here.
so it's basically his cost estimates are up, part of them because of additional land.
I unfortunately did not have a chance to talk to the project manager why have it increased such a substantial amount. He told me and I have forgotten. So I can get that info for you guys if you really need. I don't know. I don't remember what it is, but
If you
it's
solve the
needed.
mystery, then maybe you can tell me why the cost of the port modification is up to I'd love to.
Stuff happens.
That's true.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody? Are there any questions or comments from the public at this time on the TIF administrative modification number 17?
Question, Steve Johnson, White Anchorage. I wondered about the, in modification 16, the reduction of Spinard Road reconstruction for the Drive to Emerson. Does that mean the work is done or the project is being reduced?
For that particular project, it would mean that the project's not going to have funding in 18.
Thank you.
Well, no AMATS funding.
Couldn't receive any other funding.
Yeah. Just clarifying. Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay. Hearing none, the matter lies to committee.
Move forward to,
My turn to move. You can
you can move, you move.
I'll move for approval of modification, administrative modification as presented. To the policy committee.
Just forward policy.
All right. Okay, so.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. Are there any opposed to the motion? That will be forwarded to the policy committee. Now, this is the safety. So the item 5E is the safety target setting performance measures.
So this would be the first of the performance measures that I mentioned. This is a case where the state sets theirs, and then the MPO has 180 days following that to set their own. And they can set their own, one or two options. As it says in the memo, they can either establish their own target, or they can agree to support this state's target. In the case of the safety ones, which I have listed there, myself, Teresa Brewer, and Kim Carpenter, who heads the data group in the traffic department, were involved in setting the state's safety measures. So I feel pretty confident that we were in the loop to help set those. And so our recommendation by staff is to utilize the same measures that the state is using for their 2018 target. This is something we'll have to do every year. The state will set theirs every year. We'll decide if we want to agree with theirs or set our own every year. In this case, you can see there are only 5 measures that we're using. That HMVMT is 100 million vehicle miles traveled. So it's not an area that I'm an expert at, but it seems like they're doing a lot of the work work, and they're collecting most of the data. The municipality collects some of the data, but for the most part, the state is doing that. Makes sense that we just utilize theirs as well. I will attempt to find out what the most recent numbers that were tracked. I know that they were on 13 and then moving on 14, or was it 14 moving on 15? Something like that.
Scott, do you know?
I just heard that the 2015 data is in, so we're up, so it's just a matter of trying to change.
But these measures, when they were looking at the 5-year average, it was for 2013 and.
I think 13, yeah.
Because it's looking at a 5-year average. so
Right.
it's looking at-
Rolling average,
Yeah.
I don't know what years we ended with.
I've seen the spreadsheets.
The important thing is to use a 5-year average to compare to. Just looking at one single last year can give you an up and down picture that's very hard to understand.
Yeah. A basic question, yes, I'm not sure I really understand what the measure means. It means like, we hope we don't have more than 75, or we won't accept more than 75 fatalities. I mean, wouldn't you really want your target to be 0? I guess I just don't understand what the number represents.
I can respond to that. What you're supposed to do is set achievable targets. So saying 0 is not realistic to say you will have no fatalities within a year. Because the problem runs into if you don't meet your target, then there's a penalties applied to it. So you don't want to set a 0 and then be like, well, we had 1 or more, and then we're in trouble for that. So we set something realistic. What also to note is if the 5-year trend is showing an upward trend of fatalities, you are supposed to actually show an increase in your target to match it. That is what FHWA has said to everyone is you do, match what the trend is showing you. Don't set your expectations in a way you can't meet them.
Wow, so it's entirely different from like the construction industry where 0 accidents or what you're looking
I mean, the goal is trying to move towards 0, but we're not necessarily there yet.
Because we have this, the 0.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Statewide? I mean, it's not
Yes.
Statewide.
statewide, okay. All right.
It's all here in the municipality.
It's statewide, but I mean, Anchorage does
majority.
account for a large number
Yeah.
of crashes and fatalities just because we do account for
Large.
almost half of the state population.
Yes.
So we do have a lot of that, so, yes.
Sorry, a couple things. So just know that this is kind of like the top threshold. If you get below this, that means you're doing good. So you're not trying to achieve 75 fatalities in a year. You're just trying not to exceed.
We don't need really committed friends.
I'm just not going
Reach the goal.
The state's not going to go out and start running people over to achieve their fatality rate. And also, it's kind of a more serious point that these are due February 28th of this year. So there's, unfortunately, we're at the 10th hour on this.
So yeah, I've been to a couple trainings talking about the goal setting and measures and how you're looking at it. And sometimes it's not intuitive and it's not like he's talking about when you're looking at your 5-year average. And some folks, when you're seeing an upward trend, when you set your target for the next year, you actually set your target based on the trend, and it's like hopefully that you're not increasing your fatalities more than what the standard rate has been over that time. I mean, really, and always the goal is to reduce. The penalties, as he's mentioned, it's not like you're not at loss of funding, but if you're not reaching your goals, what they may evaluate and look at is that more of your funding should be going towards safety-specific projects and not other types of projects such as resurfacings and other things, because if you're not meeting your targets, these are just the first ones, safety are first, then you do have pavement preservation, you have pavement condition, you have bridge conditions, you have, there's a number of measures and targets that you have to, that are going to come out from the feds, and so you're trying to work towards all of those targets. So, thank you. Yeah. Yes, Paul.
What do the check marks mean under the 2 columns?
That means it's being included or reported on in that particular document. So you have the HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program. There's a report you have to do every year. And then there's the HSP, which is the Highway Strategic Highway Safety. What is it?
It says highway safety plan here.
Okay.
Yeah, heavy safety plan under the heavy safety office for the other measures besides infrastructure.
So it's checking which one is being reported in what document. So as you can see, HSIP reports on all of them. The HSP is just the first three. And that's a federal thing. It's not a set by the state or anything.
Mr. Post?
I would imagine that the fatality and serious injury target of 75 and 375 would be easy to meet within AMATS. But I'm curious, and maybe Scott, you have a sense here, but the 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the rates, is the rate within, what's your sense? Is the rate within the MPO higher or lower than a statewide average?
As was mentioned, the city of Anchorage is the bulk of the crashes in the state, and the rate is, this number is high. We've been heading towards the federal rate, which is closer to 1 statewide. Everyone wants to get below 1.0 in each state, and we've come pretty close in the past. So I would say Anchorage is probably well, if you're measuring rate, it's where most of the miles traveled are. It may have a lower rate than the rest of the state, but it's one of the focus areas because it's where most of the crashes are.
When you say national rate is 1, do you mean, I'm sorry.
No, I'll comment yet, sorry. We will get to that in just a moment. Was there any other questions from the committee? All right, please state your name for the record and go for it.
Tina Thompson. So my question is when you're talking about the national rate being more like 1 or less, you're talking about the fatality rate or the serious injury rate?
That's correct, the fatality rate. There isn't a national serious injury rate, but there is a state one, and our goal is to drive that down always.
Thanks.
Is serious injury rate something that's been tracked nationally up until this point?
No, but there's a goal to do that.
Okay.
Because it's-
Yeah, I'd say prior to really these goals and this coming out for MAP 21, really fatalities are the only things that are being looked at, but fatalities, for lack of a better term, are sometimes one-off events, whereas serious injuries can sometimes be more informative to overall patterns and looking at things that are solvable. So now it is more focused overall, both at the federal level, statewide, and local level. Are there any other public comments or questions at this time on this item? Hearing none, the matter lies with the committee.
Move forward to the policy committee for approval.
I only
She
need
gets so
3 people
excited.
here today. Here's where we seconded by Mr. Wolf. Ms. Walsh. Are there any opposed?
Actually, do we have an opportunity to discuss that?
Would you like to discuss further?
Yeah, I would actually. I just, and it's just, it's a matter of semantics. I would much prefer to go ahead and see something that says for your 2018 target, you're looking at, say, less than or equal to. Just the way it reads right now, your target for fatalities is 75, and I just find that preferable to go ahead and say less than or equal to. I guess I'm also a little bit concerned that we're approving this without really having a clear understanding of what the injury rates are and the fatality rates within the MPO. That's some concern. Adopt it and hope for the best, or we might want to go ahead and analyze it.
I think in the future, we probably will, once we have a better understanding. I mean, and we start looking at this more in depth ourselves as well. Because this is something, I mean, we worked with the state to help set their goals and looking at this, I mean, and looking at the data, and something we're going to continue to do as time goes on. Yeah.
Can I propose a friendly amendment? Or hopefully friendly. I would like the, underneath the column that says 2018 target for all of those be preceded by a less than or equal to sign.
Well, this is something that was already done, I guess, and this is the state that adopted that We signed it in March of 2017, so I don't know if we can make any changes to the states. Yeah, Aaron?
Yeah, so these are the state targets. So when you guys say support state targets, it basically means you're going to be showing how you are programming projects into your plan to support these targets that you see here.
Yeah.
So at a later date, if you guys want to, I just remember these need to be done in 3 weeks. So we have not enough time to be able to hash a lot of this out, unfortunately, at this time. But these are being updated every year, so it's not a set in stone for lifetime.
So then to through the chair,
To clarify, we're not trying to go ahead and say that within the AMATS area, that the fatality rate or the serious injury rate would be something we're saying that we would work towards achieving that on a statewide basis.
And we're a small piece of that to help, well, a large piece of that to help get that target,
Excellent.
at or below that target.
Yes. Mr. Hanson?
And I would support what Mr. Post said. I mean, reading this over, even the state's memo, it's like they're trying to hit 75 fatalities, not be less than. So the wording should be changed a little bit to say, or less.
So when the state goes to revise that, we can make that a recommendation?
Yes, I would seriously.
They're
not trying to hit those targets.
Okay.
So I can forward that to the guy. They're revising them right now for the 19 targets, so I can pass that along and say, hey, just a friendly recommendation.
I would support that highly.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Is there any way to break out these fatalities to report back to us seasonally so we can see when the bulk of these occur?
Yes. We live with that. That sort of information, yeah, generally, and we do it by user group, or we do it by, I mean, if that, I guess that sort of analysis is done both at the, I guess, municipal and statewide level as far as looking at that. So,
I mean, because it might help then inform us as we design projects in the future, if the bulk load is happening, say, winter, it might be better lighting, or visibility, or some other measure, but that's all.
yeah, no, specifically, I mean, it's something that Scott and I have looked at, and that relates specifically to bicyclists and pedestrians. Yeah, a lot of people would think that the worst crash months are going to be when you have your highest utilization during May, June, July, August, and actually the worst times generally are September, October, and November, when you're starting to have a predominance of dark conditions, and often you don't have snow on the ground yet, so you don't have the reflectivity of the snow to brighten things up, and so you have dark conditions, dark clothing, wet, and visibility is very difficult. So there are specific types of crashes that we have identified related to lighting and those sorts of things. So that is something that we do evaluate. Scott?
Thank you, Stephanie. As there are subcategories of crash types, and the state's plan is to go beyond reporting to the federal government, but do state reporting, as the city probably will too, to the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. And we have a Vision Zero as well since 2007 that targets working on making bike crashes and pedestrian crashes go down, train collisions, many types. But we don't have to report that.
Yeah, this is specific to what we will be target setting to the feds. Yes. All right. Are there any opposed to the motion? All right, hearing none, that will move forward. All right. We do have the standing general informational item for the 2040 MTP update. Is there
I
anything to
don't
share?
really have any update on that besides that you were.
Our MetroQuest survey should be out and available, so we can send that out to everyone. And that's talking about what projects are being looked at the alternatives right now. So it's just kind of draft version, getting comments from the public, and then bringing it to you guys, and your comments, of course, and then bringing it back to you guys and asking for approval from a model that staff is going to put together, edited with any of the comments as they see fit. So that's available at the transportation fair right now. I think it's available online. I'll have to chat with Jamie and Vivian when I see them at the fair. But we can send that out to you and the policy committee.
I know they have tablets over there.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that MetroQuest survey, so we know we can stitch it here.
could be entered in for a drawing.
There you go.
For a $25 gift card to Beartooth.
Is it going to be available like on the website eventually?
Yeah, I think everything's going to be.
That's the plan.
Okay.
I think it's online now.
Okay. I can share with friends and family that live within the MPO so that they're providing feedback too. So.
As many people as you can, we would appreciate that.
Okay. Are there any other committee comments at this time?
I've got one. So earlier last week or so, Craig put out a call for projects, right? And coincidentally, I'd just gotten through, we, at the port, we get American Association of Port Authorities and we get Seaport magazines and all of this. And there was an article in the last one from the person who's in charge of the U.S. Committee on the Marine Transportation System. And they were pointing out that there was Division 3.0 of the Federal Funding Handbook for Marine Transportation System Infrastructure, and encouraged, member ports to digest it. So I did. You know, stickies and everything on it. And I'm going through it, and it says, it talks about current things that are out there, current plans that are grant programs, whatnot, like port security grants, we do that already, KIFIA, that kind of stuff. And then it says archive past opportunities, just saying that this is something that was initiated maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, and may still be, in effect, and has, still playing out. One of them is metropolitan transportation planning. And it says a purpose to establish a cooperative, continuous, and comprehensive framework for making transportation investment decisions in metropolitan areas. Program oversight of Joint Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration responsibility. And authorization was MAP 21, 2012. So I asked Craig, so when we do a call for projects, why can't, transportation on the port, or I presume rail, be, part of that? And he said, that it's because it's not open to the public. I guess I don't quite get it, because that's a catch-22. We're required to secure the port, but it's a vital part of the freight transportation. So my comment is I'd like a little more chapter and verse on where that response came from, if you could. And I thought the rest of the committee would be quite interested to know that this is in there. Right? We're all waiting, excited. So, no, really, I would like to know, well, why is it in here if it's, can't be done?
Can't answer why it's in there, but I can track down the citation that talks about we can only spend our money in public rights of way. And if you can't get behind it unless you have a security pass, that's not a public right of way.
Even if it's a
And
public right of way.
We have specifically asked FHWA that, because the previous administration wanted to use part of our allocation in there, and FHWA was adamant about it.
Well, I guess I kind of
So I will
like that,
track down-
because I will
I'll
give
track it
feedback
down.
to the lady in charge of this committee in DC and say, don't put it in there
Yeah.
and tease us or something like that if it's not true.
I will track
Okay.
it down.
But it can be used on like
But it
roads
is,
to the port and stuff like that.
Terminal Road is a public right of way.
Up to a point.
It's a secured public right of way, but it's a platted public right of way. So,
But not with public access.
well, if you
Yeah.
have business on it, you have access. You can't drive around and just look around for fun, but if you are a trucker taking your truck to tow, yeah, you have access.
It won't score high anyways.
Sorry, Terminal Road's the one that's in great shape, but it brings us up. I really would like to
I
get
gotta
feedback
get
to this
shared.
person, because they should know, don't put it in there if there's a catch-22.
It's good information to know. I was actually, as you were talking about that, I was wondering if the same would apply. I mean, we were looking, it's different to say, but when you look at anything related to airports, most of that would be FAA funding, but I mean, I know that there's been funding used on roadways outside terminals, the public roadways, as approach to the terminals and everything else, but once it gets on the secured side of the airport, I do not believe we can use any of this.
J-Bear, for example,
Oh, yeah. If
It's another
J-Bear is
secured
not
facility.
eligible, exactly, military roadway.
and railroad right of way is difficult.
So I'd like to give that feedback to the person putting in a national magazine and say, hey, you should look at
We'll
this.
track it down.
Okay, thank you. Want to be interested?
And hearing that citation as well, because we're still required to do federal public involvement declarations and everything else as public asset access, so
Things we ponder over at the port.
Are there any other committee comments? Mr. Busk?
I just wanted to mention that the 2018 to 2021 draft skip is out for public comment. Had I been a little bit better prepared, I might have gone and the credit at the time and had the opportunity to present some information out about it.
This next one.
The public comment closes March 16th. And I encourage folks to go ahead and take a look at it. There's even a little pleasant surprise in there for the AMATS allocation.
Yep. So you said until March 16th?
Yes.
Okay.
March 8th, our next TAC meeting, you could come and present, or someone could.
If that's the desire, then I will be here.
Mr. Hanson?
Would you close this meeting so I can get over to the transportation fair and everybody else is welcome?
In just a moment, we still have the opportunity. Are there any public comments for the good of the order?
Take your time.
I'm leaving anyway.
I'm sorry. Again, I'm Tina Johnson. I'm a public member of the BPAC committee, and I was asked to come here in case there were any questions about the letter that we're submitting to the policy committee. You may not have seen it, but the BPAC committee is sending a letter to the policy committee asking that consideration be given for addressing road speeds and speed limits throughout the municipality in the interest of lowering pedestrian bicycle deaths, which are disproportionately high, compared to the traffic volume. As you can see in these, even these they're not goals, targets. Not goals. With these target numbers, that the bicycle and pedestrians involve, 2/3 of the deaths to 3/4 of the deaths. And we have attended many sessions, invited experts who've come up and given us expert and national standards correlate traffic speeds with deaths. And very many methods of traffic calming and slowing speeds can be used, which we feel are probably underused in the municipality.
Are we gonna see that one?
Next month, yeah.
Okay. I was hoping.
Yeah, I mean, we had 5 business items
Yeah.
that is
Okay.
school.
So hopefully we'll see somebody again next month too, if there's more questions. Thank you for attending, and thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? All right. Well, hearing none, and you can see down there at the bottom of the meeting, right now, over at the Alaska Airlines Center, is the Day Transportation Fair. So we will end this meeting. It is 3:45 p.m.
So